occasion. Okay, Bezos Hashem, today's daf is Daf Yud Dalid. Okay, it's very easy, light daf, easy to understand. See it on your screen. We're going to start again from the Mishnah. The Elu, second parak, and Masechta Nedarim. The Elu Matarim. Following cases are Nedarim that are permitted. In other words, if you say this, you don't have a neder. What's the first example? Chulin she'oichel lecha. Whatever I eat should be chulin, non-sacred. Well, of course, that should be easy. That's no neder. You're permitted to eat it. But the Mishnah is teaching you another thing. Kibsar chazir. If you say what my food should be like chazir, or you say my food should be kavodah zara, like avodah zara that you cannot benefit from. Ka'oris levuvim, like the hides of an animal that they took the heart out. So that is again a takroivis avodah zara, and that forever remains aser b'hana. Again, if you're associating your food to one of these items, of course it's going to be permitted. That's not a neder. Kinevelis, if you say my food should be like an avelis, utrefis, or you say my food should be like a trefa animal, kishkotzim ramasim, like insects, or you say kechalas aharon, my food should be like challah, what you give to a kohen from the dough, uktrumase, or like truma that you give to a kohen. Now here, the Mishnah says it's mutter. Now, although this is a little different, because like chazir and avela and trefis, Hashem made it aser, but a truma, you're the one that called it truma. You're the one that made it truma to be gifted to a kohen. So the answer is that the reason why. Hold on a second. I just okay. Hi, Sheldon.
Hi, Baran.
Hi. How are you? Okay, we just began the Mishnah, so we're just going to review it again. That the point of this Mishnah is that that a neder, if you want to say your food is like something, it only becomes a neder if you say my food should be like a carbon, because an animal that's a carbon is something that was designated through a vow, and it becomes aser, it becomes consecrated to the base of Mikdash. So if you say my food is like that, hegdish, it becomes aser to eat. But if you say kibsar chazir, my food should be like a chazir, or my food should be like a avodah zara, or like an insect, then it's permitted, because that you're associating your food to something that the Eibishter made aser, and therefore we're going to have a miyut in the pasuk that's going to say that doesn't qualify as a good neder. We're going to see more about that in the Gemara. If you say your food should be like truma, well, even though truma requires a person to say, oh, this food should be truma, this dough should be challah, and if you associate something to that, it's not a neder, because truma is aser to a non-kohen, and therefore, who made a truma aser to a non-kohen? The Torah made it. Hashem made it. So it's not a human-made iser. It's not a human-made prohibition. It's a Torah-made prohibition. Therefore, your association by saying my food should be like that is not a good association. And the Mishnah ends off mutter. It's mutter. That's not a good neder. Now the Mishnah says, a man says to his wife. He says to his wife, he's in a fit of rage. He said, Hare at alai ki ima. You're like my mom. In other words, that I'm not going to have relations with you, just like it's not permitted to me to have relations with my mother. Well, that shouldn't be a neder, because once again, you're matfis b'davar ha'aser. The Torah said you're not allowed to have relations with arayas, and therefore that should not be a good neder. Nevertheless, we require somebody who said that in a fit of rage against his wife. We force him to go to a rabbi or a bezdin, and they should find an opening to be mater this neder. Why? So he shouldn't be accustomed to do something like that again. So we'll see more about that in the Gemara. Okay, the first case of the Mishnah was Tama Dama Chulin Sha'oichelach. If you say Chulin, what I'm going to eat, so it's non-sacred, whatever I'm going to eat. So then that's not a neder. That's the Mishnah. That's the first opening statement of the Mishnah. Ha Amar, but if you would say, that implies lachulin sha'oichelecha. If you say lachulin, whatever I'm going to eat from you, mashma, that implies loy lechulin leheve. It should not be chulin. It should not be secular or non-sacred, but it's carbon. It should be sacred, whatever I eat from you. So if you say lachulin sha'oichelecha, lachulin would apply that it is a good neder, right? So that's what the Mishnah says. It's only because you said chulin sha'oichelecha is not a good neder. But if you use the word lachulin, so lachulin means it's not chulin, but a korban, whatever I'm going to eat, my food, so then it would be a good neder. So the Gemara asks the question, Mani Masnisit, who would be the author of our Mishnah? Rab Meir, if you would say Rab Meir, Hales le miklal lav after shmei. So we're going to see what that means. Okay, let's go back here. Daf Yudalit on top. Who less le miklal lav after shmei. Rab Meir is of the opinion that you don't say from the negative, you see a positive. It's not clear. That wouldn't make it a neder. Rab Meir doesn't hold of that concept. So la chulin, even though I know what it means not chulin, but a korban, that wouldn't be enough of a precise language for a neder. So our author cannot be Rab Meir. Vela Rabbi Yehuda, if you want to say our author of as Rabbi Yehuda, Hainuresha. That's the same author of the Mishnah in the first chapter, where it says lachulin sha'oichel lecha is usher. So, in other words, we're repeating something that we said in the first parak. So why do we do that? Answers the Gemara.
What?
Yes. What?
What are you coming home for?
So the Gemara says. That, hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Gemara says, I did. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. The Gemara says, Ella Rabbi Yehuda. The author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. Aidi diktani besar chazir. Aidi diktani kibsar chazir kavod zara. Since it says our Mishnah discusses that, talks about other cases of kibsar chazir kavod zara. So, and those are not nedarim. That's why it says chulin sha'oichelecha. That is a good neder. Okay, so that's the reason why it says the word chulin sha'oichelecha. Really, there's no novelty in that part of the Mishnah, but it's like a language that goes together. Chulin sha'oichelecha, kibsar chazir, kavod zara. All these things have no validation of a neder. Ravina says there is a novelty of this Mishnah. Hachikatani. This is what our Mishnah is trying to say. The Eilu mutarin kechulim. The following do not need mutarin kechulim. Do not need even you to go to a rabbi to be matter the neder. Even midrabanan, you don't need to do. Kibsar chazir kavod zara. You know, if you say my neder with saying my food should be like chazir or avodah zara, you don't even have to matter the neder midrabanan. Wait a second. So, because we sometimes find that even though midaraisa you don't have a neder, Rabbanim required you, made it a neder, and you have to go to a rabbi to be matir it. So therefore, that's why the Mishnah means to say, Ve'elu mutarim kechulim, the following are permitted. Like chulin, that you don't have to be matir neder, even midrabanan, if you say, kibsar chazir, kavod zara. That's how you have to understand the Mishnah according to Ravina. So the Gemara asks, if it doesn't say chulin, if it didn't tell you that idea, I would think you need to go to a rabbi to be matir the neder. Can I think such a way to learn pshat in the Mishnah? The Sefer says in the end of the Mishnah, it says, if a man says to his wife, you're like my mother. There the Mishnah says, it's not a neder d'oraisa, it's only neder d'rabbanan. You have to find another outlet. You have to find a way to matter the neder. So if the end of the Mishnah requires heter nedarim, michlal d'reisha loy boy shela. So of course, in the beginning of the Mishnah, you don't need to a shela's chacham. So I don't need the Mishnah to tell you chulin. It's like chulin, and therefore you don't need a heter chachamim to teach me that idea. It's only if the Mishnah tells you that the safest case needs a heter chachamim, so it's mashma. We can imply that even the beginning of the Mishnah you don't need a heter chacham. So then the teretz Ravina falls away, and the first teretz is that the Mishnah sometimes, for language and symmetry, will add something that's really no novelty in the Mishnah. So now the Gemara asks the basic question: how do I know that if I associate to a chazer, if I say my food should be like chazer, how do I know that neder doesn't take effect? So Gemara, how do I know that? The pasuk says, "Ish ki yider neder lashem." Yider means you make a neder. So easy way to make a neder: say, "I am forbidden on this food." That's the food is forbidden on me. That's what you're saying. Okay, but then another way is saying that this food is like a carbon. So ad yider, if you associate, the neder takes effect only if you associate with something bedavar hanoder, something that became aser, that became prohibited through another neder. So the item that you're associating your food to has to be something that became aser, like a carbon on everybody, and an item that's aser and aser to everybody, and that's called davar hanoder, something that became prohibited through a vow. So, but not that exclusion is that it became aser. If an item became prohibited because Hashem made it prohibited, like a piece of nevela, a trefa, a chazir, so then that's not a good association for a neder. So the Gemara asks, wait a second, there's another pasuk. If so, yafilu davara asanami. Even if you associate with something that's asur from the Torah, should also be a valid neder. Why? The pasuk says, "Ishki de neder lashem oy le'asor isor anafshay." In the double language says le'asor isor, on yourself, which implies that you can associate it. The neder, the lesser, is associating it to something that's isor, that's asur, even if Hashem made it asur. So you have two psukim, and they seem to teach you different things. The first pasuk tells you that maybe that you could associate it with davar hanoder. The second pasuk will tell you that you could associate it with davar ha'aser, like chazer. So why not? Why don't we say that? Answers the Gemara, no. They're both talking about you're associating with davar hanoder, but there are two types of davar hanoder. One type of davar hanoder we saw is a carbon. A carbon, when someone says something is aser, when somebody says this animal should be a carbon, so that carbon is prohibited on anybody. That animal is now aser for anybody for use. It belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, Hashem. But then there's another type of iser, a davar hanoder, that's only aser to you. For example, if somebody says, I'm fasting on the day that my father passed away, and then he says, so that fast was only him. He had the obligation to fast. Nobody else did. And food was aser to him. So then if he says on another day, this day should be the same stringencies that I had on the day that my father passed away, that's also good association. So those are two types of davar hanoder, but not association with a piece of chazer. Association with a piece of chazer is not a good neder. That's what the Gemara says. That's the Isra b'boile l'ketanya. Ezer Isra Omer b'Torah. What's an example of davar hanoder that says in the Torah? If someone prohibited himself not to eat on his father's yahrzeit, then he makes a neder on another day, saying, this day should be like that day. That's also a good davar hanoder, even though the original davar hanoder was only usher to him, not to somebody else. Okay. Now then, we're going to examine the second part of the Mishnah. Mishnah says, a man says to his wife, you're like my mother. Uraminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. The Mishnah said, we have a brisa that says, Hare at alai kibsar ima. You're also to me like the flesh of my mother. He says to his wife like that. Kibsar achoisi, you should be also to me like the flesh of my sister. Ka'orlo k'layacherem, you should be also to me like Arla, which is the first fruit during the first 3 years, Uklaya Karem, or the Klaya Karem, which is a vineyard that was created through the mixture of other items that are not supposed to be grafted with the vineyard. Anyway, all these things are aser bahana, and or you're not allowed to have relations. And you're saying your wife should be like that? Lo yama klum, it doesn't mean anything. So that's not a good neder. So how come our Mishnah says you have to go to a cheter chacham, and this Brisa says you don't have to do anything? Amar Abaya explained, Lo yama klum. This Brisa says you don't have to do anything is midaraisa, but with tzarach she'ela midarabonam. But of course, this Brisa would agree with our Mishnah said, yes, you have to go midarabonam to ask a shelas chacham to try to undo your vow. Rava says a very beautiful thing. Ha betalmud chacham, betalmidei chachamim. That brisa that says it doesn't take effect, you don't have to do anything, is by a talmud chacham. Ha, but our Mishnah is talking about ba'am haaretz, by an ignorant Jew. And therefore, what's the difference? By an ignorant Jew, if he tells his wife, oh, you're like my mother, if we tell him that you don't have to mater neder, you can still be with your wife, then another time when he will say to his wife, oh, you're also to me like a carbon, he's going to also think that he doesn't have to be mater neder. So therefore, it was very common for Amaretzim to get angry at their wives. That's a common thing, and shoot things out of their mouths. So therefore, anything that relates to their wife, which is the most closest to them, requires a heter neder. That's by an Amaretz. By the Talmud Chacham, who knows the difference between different types of Nidarim, which Nidarim take effect and which Nidarim doesn't take an effect. So therefore, if a Talmud Chacham would say to his wife, Harayat Ki'ima, you're like my mother, he doesn't need a Heter Chachamim. And where do you see in other places that there's a difference between an Amaretz and a Chacham? Well, Tanya, as we learn in the Brisa, Hanoide B'Torah. We'll see what this means in a second. Lo yama klum. If you do this, Noider B'Torah, you don't have to do anything. Rabbi Yochanan said, you don't have to do anything, but you still have to be mater neder if you're noider b'Torah. We'll see what that means. Rav Nachman said, to do heter chacham, you have to go to a rabbi was said by an Amaretz. But the Talmud Chacham ain't a tzarech sha'ayla. But if a Talmud Chacham doesn't need to go to mater neder, because these don't apply to a Talmud Chacham. So that's Rabbi's teretz and how to learn pshat in the Mishnah. Now we're going to come to explain what this means, hanoide b'Torah. Okay, and that will end this what we're learning tonight. That will take us to the Mishnah. Very simple. Hanoide b'Torah lo yama klum. A guy says, this noide b'Torah, Tanya, we're on the Yudalat Amud Beis. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Hanoide b'Torah. Someone, normally, if you want to swear you're not going to eat, you've got to say, Shvua lo eichel lecha. I'm not going to eat. I swear I'm not going to eat. Or Shvua, I'm not going to do something. What happens if a guy, instead of the word Shvua, he said, Torah, I'm not going to eat. Or Torah, I'm not going to do something. Well, you could think what he's trying to say is, I swear in God's name that's written in the Torah that I'm not going to do something, right? So the Mishnah says, the Brisa says, "Hanoida b'Torah." This noida doesn't mean a vow; it's actually an oath. He's taking a shvua. Hanoida b'Torah. He takes a swearing by saying the word Torah. Lo yama klum, it's valueless. But if he says Torah, whatever it's written inside of it, so he clearly defines that I'm not going to do something, and he says it, Torah, whatever it's written inside of it, I'm not going to do something. So that the var of kayamim, the Brisa says that means an effective shvua, because God's name is written in the Torah, and basically you're saying, I swear in God's name that I'm not going to do something. And then the Brisa says, the Torah itself, ubumasha kasaba, and what's written in the Torah. So then you added two things over there. The var of kayamim, yes, that's an effective narrative. So now the Gemara wants to understand this Brisa. There seems to be a redundancy in the second case and the third case in the Mishnah. Why? You tell me, if you say the words b'masha kasaba, what's written in the Torah, the var of kayamim, that's an effective shvua, right? So then the Torah, uva masha kasaba, and what's written in the Torah, sarech lamemer, do I have to say that's an effective shvua? If by just saying the words b'masha kasaba, whatever is written in the Torah, I'm not going to do something. So basically he's saying, I swear in God's name, I'm not going to do something. Just by saying the words, b'masha kasaba, whatever is written in the Torah. So certainly if you say the Torah itself, u'b'masha kasaba, and what's written in the Torah, you have to tell me that's an effective neder. Now, the Brisa started off and said, if you say betoira, ba, if you say hanoida betoira lo maklum, if you just say the Torah, I'm not saying I'm not going to do something. So then that could imply that what you're really trying to say is that I swear in the parchment of the Torah, not what's written in the Torah, but the paper that the Torah is written on. I'm not going to do something. So by saying the word ba, the Torah doesn't mean anything. But if you say b'masha kasaba, what's written in the Torah, so then you're more precise. That is effectively making a shvua. So then why does the third case of the Brisa say ba over masha kasaba, an effective shvua? Rav Nachman says like this. He says like this. The first the end of the Brisa that you have to add two words, ba or masha kasaba, because the makta araisa ara. The Torah was on let's say the bima. You weren't holding on to the Torah. And therefore, you have to be more precise. If you're not holding on to the Torah, you have to say ba, the Torah, and what's written inside of the Torah. That makes an effective shvuah. Because certainly by saying ba, you mean the Torah itself, the paper of the Torah, and b'masha kasav ba, what's written in the Torah. So therefore, you have to be more precise when you're not holding on to the Torah. But the Brisa, when you just say what's written in the Torah, then it's talking about the noket le bidei. You're holding on to the Torah. If you're holding on to the Torah and smamish in your hands, then you don't have to be so precise. And just b'masha kasaba is enough. So Gemara explains, machta al ara, if it's placed on the ground, it doesn't mean it's placed on the ground. It's placed on the bima. So when you can say, if you would just say what's written in the Torah, you could say what the Torah is written on. So daite agvile. You could interpret what he's saying, that his intention was on the paper, and therefore it's not an explicit shvuah. But noket lebiyodei, but if it's in his hand, so then daite al haskara shabbat. Then you can see that he's thinking about God's name written on it, and therefore, if you're holding on to the Torah by saying what's written in this Torah, I'm not going to do something, that's a shvuah, because then I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking God's name that's written on the paper of the Torah. But if the Torah is lying there on the bima, and you say, what's written in the Torah, I'm not going to do something, perhaps you're daite agvili, you're thinking about the Torah paper, I'm not going to do something. Well, Torah paper is not something that effectuates a shvuah. Therefore, it wouldn't be a good shvuah. That explains the difference. Why, by the last case of the mission of the Brisa, you have to add two words: ba uva masha kasaba. You have to say both things: ba uva masha kasaba. Ubiba is saying if you want, but really the problem with this teretz that the Gemara gave is that you have to give two. That the Brisa is talking about two cases. The middle of the Brisa, the top of the Brisa is talking about you holding on to it. The end of the Brisa is that the Torah is on the bima. So now the Gemara says, if you want, I can tell you that the whole Bryce is talking about the Machta al Ara, that it's on the ground, it's on the bima. The Torah is on the bima. And really, all you have to say is Ma Shekasa Ba. Wow. By saying what's written in the Torah, that's enough. If it's on the bima and you say whatever is written in the Torah, I'm not going to do something, that's a shvuah. So why does the third case say that you have to say ba over masha kasha? You have to read it this way. This is what the Brisa means to say. The afagav the machta al ara, even though it's lying there on the bima, kaven the oma b'masha kasaba. Since you're saying there, I specifically mean what's written in the Torah. I'm not going to do something. Mahani, that makes a shvuah. And certainly, if you would say ba over masha kasa ba, certainly would be a neder. It would be a shvuah. So the brisa is like sometimes saying a redundant case, a not necessary case, just to be more elaborate. That b'masha kasa ba is enough, and for sure ba over masha kasa ba would be enough. But so that you know that the middle case is b'masha kasa ba, what's written in the Torah, and of course, in all the cases of the Brisa, is talking about the Gemara that the Brisa is talking about that the Torah is on the bima. Now the final case, and that will end. The Iba is saying, if you want, I could tell you again. Mitziyase name noket lebiyade. the second case of the Bryce, which says the Mesh Ba is talking about you were holding it in your hand, right? You were holding you're holding it in your hands. Oh, so that means all the middle cases was that you were holding it in your hand. The third case is you're holding in your hand. This is what it's coming to saying. Kaven the nokat le bidei. Afagav the loy oma elaba command the oma masha kasa ba dummy. So the way you're going to learn shot in this price is very interesting. The first two cases is talking about where the Torah was on the bima. Okay, the first two cases. So if the Torah is on the bima, then ba is not enough. You have to say the word b'ma shekasa ba. That's the first two cases. The final case of the Brisa, according to this teretz, is you're holding it in your hand. If you're holding it in your hand, then you don't even have to be precise at all. What the final case of the Mishnah of the Brisa is telling you, that ba is enough, because we consider ba as if you said b'ma shekasa ba, because since you're holding it in the hand, so certainly when you're holding it in your hand and you say, what's this Torah, I'm not going to do something, certainly we understand what you mean is with the names of God that are written in this Torah, you're not going to do something. So that's what this final case learns, that holding it in your hand is such a indication that you want to take the shvuah, that just by saying the word ba is enough. And that's what the third case of the Brisa means. By saying the word ba, it's as if you said b'ma shekasa ba, and that would make it an effectual shvuah. Okay, Be'ez Hashem, we'll start from the Dalet of the Maze tomorrow from the Mishnah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Where's the chasana tonight?
It's not a chasana. My wife works for OHEL, and they help with training and events at night, and so I had to drive her to Borough Park.
But thank you for taking the time, Borough.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Otherwise,
Ashikoyach. Gute Nacht.
Gute Nacht, everybody.